Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Hassanein and the committee for the invitation. I'm going to talk about CGM position in Ramadan, and I will start by describing the safety of fasting in type 1 diabetes and showing the glucose profile for type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and then showing the benefit of CGM in Ramadan and outside Ramadan, and end with the recommendations. So starting with type 1 diabetes and Ramadan fasting, I believe we feel very comfortable after having so many studies done regionally and internationally, showing many examples here for adolescents in the top part of the slides and adults in the lower part of the slide. We feel comfortable to state that both adolescents and adults can achieve safe fasting during Ramadan with no worse outcome than prior to Ramadan, and this was stated in the DAR guideline of 2021 as shown in the slide. However, we know that during fasting Ramadan, many studies have reported some issues such as wide glucose fluctuation, risk of hospitalizations, ER visit, or even DKA in patients with type 1 diabetes. So let me show you first the glucose profile and then proceed with the further information and come with a conclusion. Here I'm showing you glucose profile of type 2 diabetes on the left, type 1 diabetes on the right, and you can see in the red line on the left and the solid line in the right, that in both type 1 and type 2, there is gradual decline of glucose before iftar, rapid increase of glucose during the iftar, and persistent hyperglycemia in the evening hours. Same pattern is seen in type 1 diabetes patient as well. Here's one study showing the CGM data in a poorly controlled type 1 diabetes patient, showing 42% of the readings were in range, while 48% were above range and 10% were in the hypoglycemic range. And in their conclusion, they did comment about the wide glucose fluctuation before eating and fasting hours. So this is consistent finding in many of the studies. However, I want to share with you 3 studies here that have done CGM monitoring on the same cohort when they were fasting and outside the fasting time. One was done in Tawam Hospital, 2017, one in the Imperial College, 2022, one in Malaysia, 2022 as well. And the findings were consistent between the 3 studies. There is no difference in mean glucose concentration, no difference in the hypoglycemia or time below range, no difference in the hyperglycemia or time above range. And here's one example from the Imperial College study showing the glucose profile during Ramadan compared to before Ramadan and after Ramadan. And there was no statistical significant difference in the mean. And as you can see, it is the same fluctuation. So glucose fluctuation is a fact in type 1 diabetes, whether they fast or not fast. Now, one might say, what about the finding of APDR study? They didn't report that the DKA and hypoglycemia were more common in type 1 diabetes patient? And the answer is yes. However, let me bring to your memory that the APDR study was done 20 years ago. At that time, the insulin regimen and insulin type were used different than what we use today. The SMBG was used infrequently, and the data of the APDR study was done by patient-filled questionnaire. However, most of the studies in the past 5 to 10 years relied on the direct data taken from the meter or the CGM in patients who are using insulin pump or multiple daily injection. So the findings of the recent study are much more applicable to the finding of the APDR study to what our patients are being treated nowadays. Now we come to the important part. Can CGM help in Ramadan fasting? Now, we still don't have randomized controlled studies comparing CGM and SMBG, whether in adult or children or in type 1 or type 2 patients. However, we do have studies showing that CGM can discover crucial safety data during Ramadan. I will show you 3 quick examples. Here's one study done in 25 adolescents in Tawam Hospital who were asked to use the CGM during Ramadan to assess the extent of hypoglycemia. And we found that the hypoglycemia was reported in 5.7% of the time. That is something we cannot discover by using SMBG. This is averaged to about 1.4 hours per patient per day. Furthermore, we were able to know the timing of the hypoglycemia, and in this particular study, it was mainly between noon time and iftar time. And the severity of hypoglycemia, as you can see, the vast majority was in the mild hypoglycemic range. All these data could not be discovered without using the CGM. Another study was done by Dr. Afandi and Hassanian on pregnant women with GDM who were asked to use CGM and SMPG. And they found in the result by comparing both readings that there were more hypoglycemia detected by using CGM and more hyperglycemia by using SMPG. So the SMPG was done more selectively than as recommended. Actually, they have concluded only 9% of the SMPG were done during the hypoglycemic peak time. In their conclusion, relying on the intermittent SMPG in the management of GDM patient during Ramadan fasting might be misleading. And a third study was done by Dr. Abdul Ma'in Agha, who looked at 51 patients, adolescent patients with type 1 diabetes who wanted to fast Ramadan. He asked them to wear the CGM, and they were asked to break their fast when the hypoglycemia happened. What he found that 10% of the hypoglycemic episode were asymptomatic, and patients only knew about them through the CGM use controlled by the SMPG, and he concluded that severe hypoglycemia was avoided in 10% of the subject. However, there are many more studies showing the benefit of CGM in type 1 diabetes outside Ramadan. Here's one study in 120 subjects who are well controlled, HbA1c below 7%, randomized to SMPG and CGM. And you can see how the HbA1c has dropped very nicely and was sustained throughout the study, while the hypoglycemic time was maintained significantly lower in the CGM group than SMPG. Another study in a well-controlled subject, 129 patients with baseline HbA1c of less than 7%. It did show that the CGM group were much more likely to lower HbA1c without worsening the hypoglycemia or reduce the risk of hypoglycemia without compromising the HbA1c. Many other studies showed a very consistent result that CGM improves HbA1c, reduces the incidence of hypoglycemia, shortens hyperglycemia, and improve the quality of life. This particular study showed earlier start of CGM in type 1 diabetes results in reduced ER visits for the following 2.5 years of follow-up. And in summary, if we need to put the CGM benefit in type 1 diabetes in Ramadan and outside Ramadan, now we know that CGM reduces hypoglycemia, reduces hyperglycemia, improve HbA1c, prevent severe hypoglycemia even during Ramadan, improve the quality of life, and reduce the fear of hypoglycemia. That's why I believe that CGM used in type 1 diabetes who plan to fast Ramadan is essential if financially available, and it is highly recommended. The DAR guideline of 2021 stated clearly that frequent glucose testing is fundamental to ensure safe fasting. The use of CGM or flash glucose monitoring is superior to SMPG monitoring, and it should be the method of choice if feasible. Thank you very much.